We're ready, Your Honor. We're ready.
So are you calling the next witness? Okay. And is that going to be the witness that was mentioned before?
Yes.
All right, so Ms. Simmons, you're going to be doing cross, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Judge, I'm not sure if it was clear, but I just wanted to clarify that based on the last question, I believe that my objection was sustained, so I believe we also need to move to strike the answer. I just want to make sure that was clear in the record. I apologize.
Did the witness answer the question? Okay, yeah, the motion to strike would be granted.
Thank you, Judge. Sorry about that.
Judge, I don't know if the state plans to call Dr. Pritchard after the first witness. We do have the motion that
We're going to bring this jury back in so we can present some evidence to them today. All right. Ms. Simmons, is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Nelson, you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Hicks, you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's bring in the jury, please. Ms. Simmons, does the defense acknowledge the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hicks, state. All right, Ms. Simmons?
Oh, yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Thank you. Ms. Hicks, please call the first rebuttal witness for the state.
State calls Mr. Estremera.
Thank you.
The silence or the testimony you are about to give would be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Sir, please state and spell your first and last name for Madam Court Reporter.
J.R. Estremera.
Can you spell your first and last name, please?
Oh, it's J.R. E.S.T.R.E.M.E.R.A.
And your first name is actually Amato?
Yes,
Okay, but you go by JR.
yes.
All right.
Sorry.
Please, the court.
Yes.
Thank you. Sir, can you tell us how you're employed
Self-employed.
and what company do you own?
Agora Professional Services.
How do you spell that?
It's A-Y-O-P-A.
Okay. And how long have you owned that company?
5 years.
And at some point, did you have an employee named Scott Nelson?
Yes,
And is that the Scott Nelson that's here at defense counsel table?
yes.
All right. Can you tell us the procedure by which your company hired him?
Well, we have an HR manager. Usually what he does, he'll go out to job fairs that we have, and he'll recruit from job fairs.
And do you know the particular location where Mr. Nelson was recruited from at a job fair?
Like Salvation Armies, Goodwill, stuff like that.
And does your company have a history of hiring folks that maybe are down on their luck,
Yeah, we do that.
okay? And even people that have criminal histories?
Yes,
Do you attempt to assist these people with getting back on their feet?
yes,
All right. And so your company hired Mr. Nelson, correct?
yes.
And at the time he was hired, were you aware that he had a criminal history?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell us what kind of work he was doing?
He was painting.
And what in general, what kind of work does your company do?
We do array of things, painting, cleaning, upgrades, stuff like that. Apartment complexes.
And so you were okay with the fact that he had a criminal history when you hired him?
Yes,
All right. And do you know about when he started working for you?
close to July area. I don't know exact the dates.
All right. So sometime in July of 2017?
Yes,
And, okay. So he said he was doing painting for you.
yes.
What kind of hours would he work?
We start at 8 and we get done around 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Is that Monday through Friday?
Yes.
And did he ever work weekends?
No.
All right.
no weekend work.
Did he do any other work for you aside from painting?
No, unless he's on the clock and there was no work to do for that day. Probably do something around the shop or something.
So you initially hired him as a painter,
Yes,
and if there were times when you didn't have work for him as a painter, you would try to give him other work so that he could still get paid?
yeah, instead of giving our guys the day off, we still give them hours during the day. So if we didn't have paint, they would clean the shop. Before remodeling, they'll remodel, they'll do whatever it needs to be done that day.
But that would be during working hours?
Yes,
The 8 to 4:30 that you just mentioned,
definitely.
Monday through Friday?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he ever forced to work in the evenings?
No, ma'am.
Was he ever forced to work on the weekends?
No, ma'am.
Was he your slave?
Oh, ma'am.
Okay. And at some point, did you and your employees learn that Mr. Nelson was homeless?
Yeah, my HR manager came to me and said that he's seen him sleeping outside. So,
At the time, did you have a place where your company, like an office building?
yeah, we have an office complex, yeah.
Back in July or August, September 2017, where was that office location?
That was in Forsyth Road.
And so you were testifying that your employees had seen him sleeping out on the street?
Yes.
And so as a result of seeing one of your employees sleeping on the street, what did your company do?
Well, our HR came to me, he explained that to me, and he suggested that we clear out one of our storage areas. It was an old office storage area.
Was this inside?
Yes.
So this was a storage, was it like like an extra office you had that was being used for storage?
It was an extra office. It was used for paperwork storage, stuff like that.
And so did you guys clear that out?
Yes.
Give him a place to sleep?
Yeah.
Where was he Was he sleeping on the floor? What was he sleeping on?
On a cot or whatnot, whatever he had to sleep with, sleeping bag or whatever.
Okay,
I didn't
so,
provide anything. I just cleared out a room for him.
but you provided him with a roof over his head?
Yeah.
And you did that despite the fact you knew he had a criminal history?
Yes.
Was he a good worker?
He wasn't a skilled worker.
But did he do what you needed him to do?
He clocked in, did the work, and
You-
clocked out, yeah.
Did you have any problems with him?
Management never came back to me and said anything.
Now, when you gave him the place to live, the roof over his head, did you put any conditions on that?
It was a condition because we don't, doubt's never been done in our company. So the condition was, once you get your check, then go and get your room or whatever you have to do with it. Because you'll make enough money.
So you did, because how much were you paying him?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Was it at least minimum wage?
It was more than minimum wage.
And he was working at least 40 hours a week?
Yes.
And so as I understood what you just said, you told him, stay here until you get a paycheck. Once you have a paycheck, we'll need you to go.
Yes.
All right? And so did you have any issues with him staying, where this location where you gave him, did you have any issues with him while he was staying there?
Not that we recall. I don't remember.
No issues with alcohol?
The thing is that it's been way back.
I will rule the objection.
Okay.
So do you recall having any issues with him staying where you guys had given him a place to stay?
Yeah, so the thing is it's an office space. It's a work place. So, he was supposed to be out of that office space in the morning before the rest of our employees come in. So, there was a time that I do remember the HR came to me and said he opened up the downstairs refrigerator, which is in the warehouse for all the employees just to use for their drinks and whatever. During the week, they'll stock it. July it's hot, so they carry their waters and stuff. But there was beer in there at one time.
Okay. Did you fire him because you found beer in the office mini fridge?
No,
Did you tell him he had to get out of this place that you had given him to live because you found beer in the mini fridge?
no, but it was reprimanded.
Okay. So told not to do that, but allowed to keep working for you?
Yes,
And allowed to keep staying in this space that you had given him to stay?
yes,
All right. Now, at some point, did you meet with his probation officer?
yes,
His probation officer came to your location?
yes.
Okay. And did his probation officer talk to you about his criminal history?
He didn't really talk about it, but he's there on probation, so I'm assuming he has some sort of probation.
Okay. So the real question is, did his probation officer come and tell you what his criminal history was?
No,
Was his probation officer there to confirm that he had employment?
yes,
All right. And after you spoke with his probation officer, do you remember the probation officer's name?
no, not really.
Does
Richard.
Julio Dominguez sound familiar?
Julio, Spanish guy. I can remember his face, glasses.
Okay. But was that conversation fairly inconsequential to you? Is that fair to say?
Fair.
Let's sustain the objection to the form.
Let me ask you this. After you had the conversation with the probation officer, did you fire Mr. Nelson?
No, ma'am.
Did it cause you any, based on whatever the probation officer told you about Mr. Nelson's criminal history, did it cause you any concern about continuing to employ Mr. Nelson?
No.
All right. And did the probation officer demand that you fire him?
No.
Did the probation officer demand that you kick him out of the place where he was living?
No.
Did you in fact fire Mr. Nelson because the probation officer came and talked to you?
No.
Did you in fact kick Mr. Nelson out of the place where he was living because the probation officer came and talked to you? When did Mr. Nelson stop working for you?
Late or early September?
Early September of 2017? All right. Had you paid him up to that point?
Yes.
Why did he stop working for you?
Because we told him that when he got his check, he was supposed to leave, and he never did.
Okay.
So we dismissed him from that housing.
He got a paycheck from you,
Yeah.
and you told him he had to leave from living inside the thing, right?
Yeah, he came to me and said, I'm looking, I got this room and blah, 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 but he never left.
Okay. So you had put a condition on him being allowed to stay there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had paid him the paycheck that he earned.
Yes.
And then once, because now that condition has basically come to fruition. You've gotten a paycheck, time to go, right?
Yes.
All right. And so did you fire him from his job, though?
No.
Did you tell him you can keep working here, you just can't keep living here?
Exactly.
Let's sustain the objection to the form.
Would you have allowed, we're no longer going to allow him to live there because he had earned money, is that correct?
Objection leading.
Sustain.
Okay. So were you going to let him keep living in the office complex?
No.
And why is that?
Because he needed to have his own place to live. Well, I'm not in an apartment complex. I'm not a leasee. It was a compassion part on the company to do that.
Were you going to allow him to continue working for your company, although he couldn't live in your company's office space anymore?
Yes.
So you did not fire him?
No.
All right. And did he ultimately stop coming to work, though?
Yes.
Objection leading.
Let's sustain the objection.
Strike the answer.
Did you ever fire him?
No.
Does he still work for you today?
No.
When did he stop working for you?
When he stopped showing up to work.
He stopped showing up to work?
Yes.
Did anybody tell him he couldn't
It was
keep coming to
no
work?
show, no call. He just didn't come back the next day.
Okay. But did he leave you guys a note?
He left a note.
And what was that note?
He left a note saying that he'll be back for his check.
And when did he pick up his paycheck?
Yes.
When did he pick up that paycheck?
When the paychecks were handed out,
Do you remember the date?
it had to be then in right around September area. I don't remember. I can't recall the exact date.
Okay, let's hold on one second. Judge, may I approach?
Yes.
Sir, you were interviewed by law enforcement back in October of 2017, correct?
Yes.
Would looking at the interview that you did with a detective from the Winter Park Police Department, would that help refresh your recollection as to the
Okay.
date that he picked up his last check?
Yes, if it's there.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm showing you page 8. You can read as much of this as you need to. I'm looking at this part in here.
So on,
Go read it to yourself.
oh, okay.
Does that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
What was the date that Scott Nelson picked up his last paycheck?
It's the 15th.
Of September?
Yes.
Of 2017. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon. Now, as part of your job, your employment, you require your employees to be drug tested?
Not always. But since he was assumingly already on probation, he was already getting drug tests.
Well, you drug tested him, and he never tested positive, is that correct?
I don't recall. HR does most of that stuff.
One moment. so you all, but your HR guy does drug test your employees? Sorry, you have to answer out loud. Is that a yes?
Certain occasions, yes.
Okay. In this case, with Mr. Nelson, he was drug tested by your HR guy.
I would have to look at the records in this file.
You recall giving a deposition in the... You spoke to police in this case, right?
Yes,
You gave a recorded interview,
yes,
and at that time, you told the police that Mr. Nelson passed his drug tests.
okay. You're telling me, I'm not understanding.
Would it help to look at the transcript?
Yes, definitely.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just want to direct your attention to page 7, lines 33 through 36.
Okay, let's see here. We do drug testing. Okay,
You recall telling the police that Mr. Nelson passed the drug test?
yes,
And now you said that you did not know that he was on probation until his probation officer showed up?
no,
Maybe I worded that in a poor way.
yeah,
Is it correct that you did not know that Mr. Nelson was on probation until his probation officer showed up to your office?
no.
That's not correct?
I mean, I would have known somehow or another from HR.
You would have known from HR. But you didn't know, well, you said that you knew Mr. Nelson was a convicted felon.
Yes,
Generally.
That I knew, yes.
Okay. But you didn't know the extent of his conviction or his time in prison or his probation until the probation officer showed up.
As far as the extent of it,
Right. What his conviction was for, the amount of time that he spent in prison, the fact that he was currently on probation. You did not know those facts until his probation officer showed up.
I didn't know those facts even after he left.
Okay. Well, the HR person that worked for you was let go shortly after this case came up. Is that right?
Left afterwards, yes.
You fired him.
It was a disagreement on other issues.
Well, you mentioned that he was supposed to be conducting background checks on Mr. Nelson and failed to do so. Or at least that was your perception, that he failed to do a complete background check on Mr. Nelson?
That and the other particular items that we have in our company.
Okay.
So I'm not understanding what you're trying to ask me. Why I fired him?
The HR person that you had, that was working back at the time, in the summer of 2017, he was supposed to do a full background check on Mr. Nelson.
That part, true, yes.
And he did not do that to your expectations?
True. That's not the firing purposes.
Right, but in this case, once you found out about Mr. Nelson's background, that changed your willingness to have him live in the office.
No.
When the probation officer you mentioned something about a beer being found,
Yes.
and you don't actually have any personal knowledge about that, is that correct?
It was only what employees or the HR would come to me and tell me about.
Okay. You were previously asked, well, let me back up. You gave a deposition back in April 12th of 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
And I was there, and the prosecutors were there.
Yes.
And I think perhaps you need to speak up so that everyone can hear you when you answer, okay?
Yes.
When you And you were asked about Mr. Nelson having beer stored in the office, and at that point of deposition, you said you didn't know about anything like that.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
It could be. I mean, you're talking a year later too.
You don't remember your responses?
Well, at that time, it might have been different. I might have not remembered.
Okay, but you talked about how your employees would know that, not you personally.
I understand that, yes.
You didn't have a lot of day-to-day interaction with your employees, did you?
No.
Okay. May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have any other questions.
Redirect? All right, sir, you may step down. All right, members of the jury, in just a moment, we're going to take a brief recess. During the recess, you're going to continue to leave your notepads and your pens here. During the recess, you're under all the court's instructions, including but not limited to the instruction not to discuss this case amongst yourselves with anyone else. Please follow the deputy in the jury room. We'll bring you back as quickly as we can. Thank you. All right, we'll be in a brief recess.